Hey, everybody, welcome back to our little live chats on this week. And I'm Doug O'Brien. We're going to be talking today about sleight of mouth. Overall, we're going to be talking about how to go beyond techniques, and yet we will be talking about techniques. In the Essential Coaching Skills program that I teach, 3 essential coaching skills: sleight of mouth, Ericksonian hypnosis or neo-Ericksonian hypnosis, and basically a big part of NLP, sort of what I consider to be the essential parts for coaching in NLP. So we'll be covering those today, Thursday and Friday. So today we're going to be talking about sleight of mouth, and Thursday focusing more on the NLP, Friday focusing more on Ericksonian hypnosis. Wednesday, of course, is the big webinar where I sort of present the whole idea of this essential coaching skills membership that we're inviting you to. Just so you know, we are inviting you to a membership, so that we're inviting you to be a member of a year-long coaching cohort. We divide these focus groups, if you will, the focusing on sleight of mouth and NLP and hypnosis, into 4-month cohorts. You're welcome to do all the things that we do for a full year of this membership. So that's what it's all about. And I'll explain more about that in just a few minutes. But right now, we're talking about sleight of mouth. So those of you who know about sleight of mouth, it probably needs no introduction. But since some of you may not know about sleight of mouth or have perhaps misconceptions about sleight of mouth, I'm going to just do a wee presentation about sleight of mouth. And then I have a special guest who's going to join me to talk about his experience, not only with sleight of mouth, but also with the cohort, learning it from me. So I'm going to just go over to this little slide presentation, and I don't know if it's starting from the beginning. I hope that it starts defaulting from the beginning, but we'll find out in just a second. Okay, no. So how do I go back to the beginning? Here we are. Pretend you didn't see that. Okay, so sleight of mouth, that's the word there, is a bunch of ways of reframing and responding to a belief. So once you hear somebody's belief, once you hear what somebody's limiting belief is, and we're assuming, of course, it's a limiting belief that we want to change. Otherwise, why would you want to change it? You wouldn't, right? So if you hear somebody's limiting belief, there are 14 different ways of responding. That is what gives sleight of mouth its power. There's not just one, not just two. There are 14 different ways of responding to this, said belief, this belief that the person holds, in order to reframe them, help them think differently. Go from belief A to belief Z. So how do you get them there? 14 different patterns of responses. But if you notice, that's a lot of stuff right there. I wanted you to see them all. These are ways we can do them. They're all right there. That's the information. And frankly, it's kind of it. That's it. That's the whole kit and caboodle, kind of, sort of, right there. But what's interesting to me about that is that it's kind of too much. It's been said in NLP, we can understand or comprehend 5 plus or minus 2 bits of information. Some people say 7 plus or minus 2. Some people, I think it's probably generous to say 5 plus or minus 2 bits of information. I think for some people it's 2 plus or minus 2 bits of information that they can comprehend and make sense of. That's a joke. But sometimes it seems like it's true. But nevertheless, it's more than we can handle no matter which numbers you're using there. So what's interesting to me about it, to me, it's like my dad. My father used to have a workbench that looked something like that. When I was a kid growing up, his workbench, frankly, that's modest compared to his. Is much more like this. It was just piled high with stuff. And he didn't have a pegboard. This was just piled high. It was messy. None of these are his, but obviously he wasn't alone in having workbenches like this. By contrast, my neighbor across the street, Mr. Schilt, actually right next door neighbor, had a very neatly organized workbench where everything was, like this. You've probably seen guys like this that have these workbenches where everything has got a little painted representation of the tool that hangs there, and every tool hangs exactly where it's supposed to be. And if it isn't, when you're done with it, you put it back where it belongs. Benjamin Franklin said, a place for everything and everything in its place. That's what we strive for. Sleight of mouth is like that. We try to take these things, all this stuff, and instead of just putting it in categories like we used to when we were taught in school to put these categories in, we think that, the brain is much more wild and having these associations that aren't necessarily just neat and orderly, linear, digital sort of stuff. Brain is kind of wild and woolly, and it's, all the different synapses and stuff are there. So we use a different method. It's more like mind mapping. It's more like mind mapping, where you put the central idea in the middle and you do mind mapping around it. Sleight of mouth patterning is not a mind map. It is, however, icon representational chart. It's probably more like the pegboard for your tool chest. So all those 14 symbols are the symbolic representation of those 14 different patterns. Now, if you're really quick, you probably notice that there are 16 different patterns here because 2 of them are repeated. This sort of circular one with the arrow on it is repeated over here, and this box underneath, these 2 middle boxes, are here. So the central belief is put in the center, and then all these different patterns are represented by these icons. So why does it make it easy? Well, it just does. It makes it easy. It gives you those places to hang your tools. So all the tools are available to you. And what we try to do in this class is get it so that you have time to practice it. To be perfectly frank with you, I'll be Doug for the most part, but for right now, I'll be perfectly frank. I've been teaching Sleight of Mouth for a long time. Literally, it was the first seminar I ever taught ever, back in like 1987, I believe it was. I had learned it just that year, that month, from Robert Dilts as part of my master practitioner training in Santa Cruz, California. I came back to New York City, and within a month, I was teaching it to Tony Robbins's sales team, New York sales team. So, and they were all NLPers. Tony Robbins, I don't know if you know this, was an NLP trainer back in the day. He was a trainer of NLP. He taught NLP certification courses. I got certified in NLP from Tony Robbins, but he didn't teach Sleight of Mouth. And so when I went to Robert Dilts' master practitioner training, came back to New York, all the, Tony Robbins trained NLPers were going like, tell us about Sleight of Mouth. So I was sort of thrust into this position where I taught a class in Sleight of Mouth. I went on to teach it over and over again to different people, different places over the years. Eventually I made a set of tapes for it, and I took the workbook for that set of tapes, and I would send it to people. You could buy them, and I would send them to you wherever you lived. I'd mail this or a copy of this manual with all the different Sleight of Mouth charts in there with a set of tapes. After a while, people said, hey, do you have it on CD? And so I put it onto CD. And then, frankly, I needed to re-record it. So I went into a studio, and I made a really definitive set of 2 CDs. And all the information that I teach in this class, pretty much, might be some exceptions, but pretty much all the information I teach in the class is in those 2 hours of CDs. So why would you want to sign up? Why would you want to sign up for a 4-month cohort where we meet every week for 4 months to do one thing that you could get on 2 hours of tape, 2 hours of CD, 2 hours of MP3, because you can still buy them as MP3 downloads. Happy to sell them to you. Why would you sign up for a 4-month cohort? Because you need to do that in order to get it into your fingers, into your bones. I say fingers because I'm a piano player. And when I learned a piece of music, like this piece of music I'm working on right now, Transmutational Etudes by Donald Bowen. When you work on a piece of music, you got to practice it in order to get into your fingers so that you can perform it or play it for people or play it for yourself, without having to like read the music and stuff. Just play it as music. Takes some time to get into your fingers. You need to practice. So that's what we do. That's what we do. Even when I taught a 2-day workshop in Sleight of Mouth, the only difference between what I was doing in 2 days and the 2 hours of information is that we practiced for 2 days of the things that are on those 2 hours of tapes. It is, I think, necessary to do that. That's how I did. I forced myself to do it. And of course, teaching the classes didn't hurt me doing it. But I'd like to introduce you to a friend of mine named Steve Ryan, who has agreed to be here today. And he's he's off camera right now, but he's listening to me, and he just waved, but nobody can see us, Steve. So stop waving. Just No one can see you. It's a little pathetic, Steve. Um, but we're going to bring him. Steve was nice enough to take my cohort a year or two ago, and we're going to ask him. You're going to find out from him whether it was worth doing. Whether he got anything out of this 4-month, being with me live like this, but interactively. We do it on Zoom, so you can actually interact and stuff. Oh, by the way, I'm not following any comments. Let me go over to the comment section. You can comment, and I can hear you. I can see you. You can click on the comment section in whatever you're following this on Facebook Live. If you're joining us live, you can put a comment and we will see it, and we'll be happy to respond. So if you have any questions, pretty sure it's working. It worked yesterday, but go ahead and put stuff in the comment section and we will respond. Facebook Live, YouTube, comments, we'll see it. We'll respond. If you have any questions, please do. But meanwhile, here's my good friend, Steve Ryan. So let's find out from him what we're talking about. Hey, Steve.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, you and I have a little bit of Irish in common. So since yesterday was St. Patrick's Day, I'd like to take this opportunity to wish you a happy St. Patrick's month, I guess. We'll just put it that way.
That's the way I always liked it. It's St. Patrick's month.
Well, I'm glad we have that agreement. So, Steve, what for you was your experience with Sleight of Mouth, and particularly for right now, at least the cohort, the way that we did it every week for all that period of time?
It was really, for me, it was life-changing.
Really?
I started my journey coaching about 5 years ago after retiring from selling my business. And the thing that I found the best about my old business is that I was coaching, I was mentoring, I was teaching people. But like you were saying, I didn't have a lot of tools in my tool belt. I could tell people a lot of things, but the Sleight of Mouth gave me a dozen or two more tools on how to communicate better with people, how to influence people more, and influence them to change their beliefs from, let's say, a negative belief, a disempowering belief, to something that would be more empowering for them, and do it on a logical level, but also do it at an unconscious level as well. So it's so great.
Nice. Cool. And you said you went from your business to being a coach, and you learned to do this for that purpose so that you could apply this to your coaching situation?
Yeah. My coaching business that I have now, I retired from sales and marketing career, and then went immediately into this because to admit it, I'm not a very good retired person. I like to keep busy, and I love to be giving what I call continuing to provide and give service to people.
Nice.
And so this was a critical thing for me with Sleight of Mouth. Would you call it a mastermind?
No.
Okay. I won't call it that anymore.
Some people might call it that. I wouldn't call it that, but
a gathering.
It's kind of like a master class, really, in a sense, because, well, in a master class, you meet with I don't know if you've ever been a musician or whatever, but in a master class, you get together with a group of people, get together with a master who teaches, sometimes, does demos with one of the students or whatever, but he's teaching everybody, even though through the lucky student that got picked to be up there playing with him or her. The master.
Then that would totally describe what you do in the class every week. Is you work with your students. You challenged us. You were really good. We'd have breakout groups sometimes.
Yeah.
And you would come in and listen to us, and then constantly just be giving us tips on how to improve.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's fun for me. I mean, it really is fun for me. And, I don't know, where do you live, Steve?
I live in Minnesota.
So, yeah, I'm in New York. You know, the thing about this stuff is that you don't have to leave home. When I used to teach these classes live before there was the option to not do them live, you know, back in the 80s and 90s and 2000s and stuff, people would have to travel. If you wanted to take a Sleight of Mouth class from me, you'd have to get on a plane from Minnesota and fly to New York and stay in hotels or at a friend's couch or whatever to be there for the long weekend. You have to pay New York prices for meals and stuff like that, and plus take all that time away from your family, etc. This is super easy. I mean, it really is. It's super easy for you. It's super easy for me. I'm in my living room, and yet it is live and it is personable. You know, we get to know each other, we get to work with each other, and it's pretty rare, honestly, that sort of possibility can exist with folks, and I love it. I mean, I say this facetiously, but thank God for COVID. You know, I'm kidding. Of course, it was horrible, terrible, but and I had frankly, I had planned to start shifting my teaching to do this anyway. I had an office in Manhattan. I'm now at my little country cabin up here, but and literally it's tiny. This is my ceiling right there, but it's fun. That's mine. I have a piano. It's good. Nobody complains. I have no neighbors. My next door neighbor is a horse about a quarter mile from here. But I forgot what I was saying. But yeah, just suffice it to say, it's a great thing. So tell us a little bit more about how it has worked for you. I know you've got to leave. You can't stay here all day with us. So how has it worked for you to I mean, were you a coach before you did Sleight of Mouth? Was Sleight of Mouth in addition to your coaching practice?
Yeah, I when I was taking Sleight of Mouth, I was working for I was hired during COVID for basically mental and emotional support.
Uh-huh.
And I was working on becoming a private coach, but I was working for a school system for about 3 years.
Okay. And how did Sleight of Mouth change your approach or change your practice?
Sleight of Mouth allowed me, as I mentioned before, to have different tools, but it also allowed me to become a better listener.
Tell us more. That's really interesting, actually. That's really interesting. Tell us more about that.
When you're listening well, you can allow yourself to think about, what is the client saying? What's the deeper meaning? Where are they going? Is it a belief system? Is it something that they have, something that's not helping them? And so it just allows you to have more ways to go. Before I came on, we were behind the scenes, and I was thinking that it's allowed me to be more like the Matrix, where Neo gets to the very end after his journey of doubt and training. And when it came to be something that could have horrified a lot of people, he looks at his enemies and goes, bring it on. And I think, like, I was working with a client. Can I talk about a client that I just worked with yesterday?
Up to you. It's your client privilege thing going on, but go ahead. As far as I'm concerned, we need name, address, phone number, and social security number.
Sure. Her background is that she didn't feel very sure of herself. And the word that she used was that she was scolded too much within her background as a kid. And so I was looking as a coach to figure out how she could be empowered. And so we took the benefit of what maybe the scolding might have been to mold her into the person that she is today. And we used that. So we took and reframed and redefined her past that it was a journey, just like Neo's.
Mm.
So she went from feeling that she was scolded too much, that she was empowered and molded to be the strong woman she is today.
Cool.
And I couldn't have done that unless I had studied Sleight of Mouth.
Nice.
And when I changed and reframed it, like we have in the patterns, redefined it, changed her map of the world, she lit up.
Nice.
And now, instead of it being a negative, now you could just see all the neurons firing off, that she was now empowered to do it rather than scared to do it.
Sweet.
So it was magical. It was just a magical moment, just with that one word difference.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about it too, because there are 14 different patterns of sleight of mouth, right? There's 14 different patterns. And we teach them, I teach them to use them in combination, to go from one pattern to another pattern to another pattern. And we always think, well, if I could just get that one right pattern, I wouldn't have to do all that different stuff. Just get that one right pattern. But we never know exactly which pattern it's going to be that makes that change, because the listener has to make the change in their own brain. We don't know what's going to necessarily happen with that, but it's so magical when that does happen, when you do hit the right little reframe. And then probably from your experience in sales, you know when to shut up and stop reframing, right? When they've had that little
aha moment,
right? Yeah. Then you just say, like, that's right.
Yeah. And that's what, and your class really helped us drill down. And what I call, in at least from the way I think about it, is you can get into the habit, but when you do it enough, like over those 4 months, it just becomes installed. And then you'll know where to go magically. Yeah. And you're also not afraid of using the different tools and the patterns to just see what clicks.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's beautiful. And I think it's a testament to you, really, Steve, that you get that, because sometimes, not so much in my classes, and I don't think almost never in my 4-month classes, because people do have the opportunity to really get it over time. But people sometimes make the mistake of thinking that sleight of mouth is about telling. And doing these, I'm so good at this facile stuff, I'm going to make you change, or convince you, or I'll sell you, or whatever. I remember this one guy I was having a conversation with. He was talking so fast and doing all these different patterns at me, at me, not to me or with me, but at me. And I was like, okay. And he's going like, I out sleight of mouth Doug O'Brien. I out sleight of mouth. It's like, you didn't do nothing, boy. But you just were like spilling your guts without any connection. There's a human connection. Communication, is to communicate, comes from the word commune. A community. It's a commune. It's a connection with people. Sleight of mouth is a communication. Sleight of mouth is a conversation. We do this, without having to put somebody into a trance, without having to say, okay, picture one hand here, and you don't have to do an NLP process with them. It's conversational, but it is still pretty magical conversation, that you're connecting with another person. You're listening to what it is they're saying. You're watching their other than conscious communication, their body language, to see if they're connecting and getting that light up aha moment or not, And it's a testament, I think, to you, Steve, that you're able to do that.
Yeah, you said that really magically. It's like when you care and when you commune and you have that rapport. Her past was in somewhat negative, her belief in all of the experiences she had from her past. But that one slight word change changed everything in her past, that it was, instead of flimsy, now it's solid and unprepared.
Ah, that's beautiful. I'm getting chills. Really.
And it's great. Magical. So you don't have to do the, I want you to visualize and everything. It's linguistically getting it and you can see when it happens. But my technique is more, I've taken Sleight of Mouth as statements and turned it into open-ended questions. So most of the Sleight of Mouth that I do is, what about from this to this?
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Some of the Sleight of Mouth patterns are often questions, but not all of them.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Yeah.
And as you get it and install it in yourself, then it becomes your own.
Nice.
And then if you care and you commune with people, then you can magically help your clients forward.
Yeah, I've often told my NLP students that there is a secret to the NLP, matching and mirroring rapport skills stuff. It's like the secret to rapport is to actually care about the person. Because if you don't have to put it on if you actually care. Your body will do it naturally. We as human beings, we naturally match each other. If we, people who are like each other tend to like each other. We behave like each other. We do that naturally if you actually care. Although it's good to know the skills too.
Really, really good. Doug, I have to run. As I said to you before, I would love to spend time with you more than going to the dentist right now.
Yes, and that I'm touched by that sentiment, really. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for being here.
And it means a lot that Doug asked me to come and speak because he's been a big influence in my life.
Oh, I appreciate you being here, and good luck with the dentist. Hope everything works out for you there.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Steve Ryan, boys and girls. So yeah, thank you for being here, Steve. It was really fantastic. And I really do hope everything goes well at the dentist. Let's go back to the slides a little bit about what you learn with Sleight of Mouth, because it is interesting. I thought what he said was really great about listening. Sleight of Mouth is not just about doing these amazing things and being, linguistically magical in your persuasion abilities. It seems that way sometimes, but that's not what it's about. What it's really about is, like we were saying, is communicating with your coach client, with the person that you're talking to. It's the same as in sales, by the way. Sleight of Mouth I've often taught to salespeople. It's great for sales. It's great for sales, but not because you become such a slick talker, but because you really learn to listen for the belief that the person has, and some sort of align with that belief, align with them and say, yeah, I agree. And let's move it to this better choice. Instead of thinking about your past as a detriment, you think about your past as a solid resource. That's more useful. So how do we get you there? It's aligning with what they're saying that they're already actually believing. So let me go back to the slide so you see a little bit about how Sleight of Mouth does that. Oh, and just one as a little side light here for a moment. I'm presenting this 5-day thing yesterday, today. Tomorrow's a big, well, not same time frame, same exact time of day, 1 to 2 o'clock, but it's more of a webinar where I'm combining all these things, more of the, the traditional webinar sort of thing. There'll be no interactive questions. And by the way, feel free to put a question, or I appreciate the comments that some of you put in. Put it in. I will see them. I respond to them. This is what this is for. It's informal. Ask questions. I love questions. So please, as Steve said, Neo did, let me have it. Come at me. But during this week, there's coincidentally the guy that made Sleight of Mouth up, the guy who created it, Robert Dilts. I'm looking around for his book. It's around here somewhere. The author of Sleight of Mouth, the original book, and now Sleight of Mouth 2 was out, published last year, is coincidentally doing a webinar tomorrow night as well. He's teaching Sleight of Mouth in his own way, Sleight of Mouth, advanced Sleight of Mouth, or something like that. I'm not trying to compete with him. You do his class if you prefer, or do both. That's great. I'd love to have you. This is different. This is not competition. This is an opportunity to be together with a cohort of people who work together over time in order to really get these things in your bones. I liken it to playing the piano or any musical instrument, but it's also the same as like working out with weights. You know, if you go to the gym once, January 2nd, you know, it's going to be good, but not as good as going every day to the gym or once a week or, regularly going to the gym or regularly working out or regularly getting a good night's sleep, instead of trying to catch up on Saturday, sleep in on Saturday, getting the regularity really helps you to get it into your bones so you can use it when you need it, so you have it at your fingertips when you need it, when you're actually trying to help somebody, when you're actually in a coaching situation, when you're actually in a sales situation, when you need it, you have it there. I apologize for hitting this table. I noticed it's jiggling a little bit. I keep thinking this extended keyboard section of the desk won't cause anything, but I'm going to just move it away from you and just try to not touch anything at all. So I stop wiggling, but I have to touch it again because I've got to go to the slides. So here are once again, the slides, and it should be coming to stage. There it goes. Okay, so these are all the different patterns of sleight of mouth, the sleight of mouth patterns. But where it starts from is to say, Steve was talking about having rapport, having a way of agreeing. I don't know why this looks funny. There's no difference between the first statement and the second statement as far as why it's indented like that. So you start by agreeing with the person. You get to listen. You listen for them. You listen to what they're saying, and you say, "Yes, I appreciate that. Yes, I agree with that. Yes, I respect that." You find something that you can respect about what they're saying or agree about what they're saying. You listen, and you find the place where you can have alignments. Like, yes, I agree with this part. I appreciate this part. You find that place of alignment, and then you use the word "and." You try to avoid the word "but" at all costs, because the word "but" kind of negates what you're saying before you butt up against each other. It doesn't work very well for rapport matters. So you use the word "and" instead of "but," and then you find out ways that you can agree. Now, with sleight of mouth, we have the recognition that beliefs are everywhere. We have beliefs all the time. Everything we say, even what I'm just saying right now, is based on beliefs that I have, that if I use this word, it will work. If I, knock on the ceiling, you'll get the idea that there's a ceiling here. There's lots of beliefs that I have. They're based on reality, aren't they? Beliefs are based on reality. They represent reality. So as an example, we live in a cause-effect world. Let me just come back to full screen for a second. We live in a cause-effect world. If I took this little clown nose, my wife is a clown teacher. If I took this little clown nose, it's just an object. If I took any object, and if I let go of it on the planet Earth, then it falls down because of gravity. So if I let go, then it falls. If then is a belief. That's the structure of reality for our reality, this cause-effect world. If I raise my voice, if I yell really loud, it will be more, it'll carry further. If I do that, it might sound angry. There's different if-thens. We live in this world of if-thens. If I, slam my car into a tree, then I will have a bad accident, and the tree and the car will both suffer, and probably me as well. So it's an if-then world. Right? Beliefs are structured on an if-then, but they're not necessarily real. Not necessarily real. They might be actual, factual as much as we can muster them, but they're not necessarily real. But they seem that way. So if I say, yes, I believe in Santa Claus, it's based on this thing. Well, if I get presents at Christmas, then there must be a Santa Claus. If I get Christmas presents that are signed from Santa, well, who else wrote that? Come on, would you? So it's an if-then belief based on what I believe to be a cause-effect real thing. All right? So people have beliefs about everything. It doesn't, when you ask somebody, what is it that you believe? It doesn't have to be about, God or, politics. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It could just be a little thing. Like, I believe that it's good to write with a pen instead of a pencil. It's it's there. So people have beliefs, right? Everybody does. So let's imagine that there's a person here who says that they believe in the abominable snowman, also known as the Yeti. So they just have this belief that says, yeah, I believe in the Yeti. Yes, Yeti. That's what that little sign says on the side of the suitcase. So a belief is rarely stated in its full, I believe in a Yeti because I saw them. And, it's rarely stated in its fullness. It's a shortcut. It's like this little sticker on the side of the suitcase. Yes, I believe in the Yeti. Somebody else might say exactly the same thing. Yes, I believe in the Yeti. Right? They might have the exact same shortcut, belief that they have, but what's inside that suitcase is what's important. So we need to get inside that suitcase. And in Sleight of Mouth, what we learn is you have to ask certain questions in order to unpack their belief. Right? We want to unpack their belief by asking questions. So we have to find out. If we find out, why do you believe that? From one guy, one person, they say, well, I've got this, and their suitcase might be really, really full of stuff. They have all sorts of supporting evidence of why they believe in the Yeti, right? Their father used to hunt them. They have photographic evidence. They found some Yeti scat in their backyard, blah, blah, blah. Aunt Phyllis ran off with the Yeti and we never saw her again. Any number of things could be proof that there is a Yeti. Another person who has the same exact shortcut sticker on their suitcase, you ask them some of the questions like how and why do you believe in the Yeti? And they find that there's like no evidence. There's like a pair of moth-eaten socks there. If you can believe this or not, ladies and gentlemen, I drew these pictures myself. This is original artwork. That's a suitcase representing a suitcase there with socks in there and a moth flying out. That's a moth flying out of the suitcase. Yeah. And I believe I'm a good artist. So anyway, we ask good questions. So one of the things we learned is by listening is that we can ask meta-model questions, NLP meta-model questions. But there's also questions that are real specific to Sleight of Mouth that we will be learning. Like, how do you know that? What makes it that way? What causes that? Where they come from? Because what we want to do is elicit the entire belief. We want to not be satisfied with just those labels on the suitcase. We want to elicit the whole belief. And what does that mean? It means this. Again, I don't know why the words are finding their own ways of being indented at different parts. It should be the cause, effect, meaning is really screwed up there. It's the cause to the effect, obviously, is the triangle to the square. So it goes cause, effect. And then the meaning is the circle. Let's see if there's a better picture. Oh, that's a little bit better. It's still not perfect. It means. So another way of saying it, instead of cause, effect, meaning is if, then, means. If then means. So this is the structure of a belief. Every belief in the world has this structure. Now, rarely will a person state it like this. Rarely will a person say, if this, then that means such and such. They will just say something like, I believe in the Yeti. Or they'll say something like, it's too expensive. Or they'll say something like, I can't go there. I can't. To them, that's a meaningful statement, right? I can't go there. It's meaningful. It's packed probably, right? With meaning. We have no idea what it is that they mean unless we ask good questions. And what we try to do with Sleight of Mouth is elicit this, the beliefs, the portions of the belief that go into these boxes, the cause, the effect, and the meaning. How do you know that? What causes that? What's that mean to you? We need to know that information, because once we know that information, then we can start guiding them to a different way of believing that perhaps is more useful, like Steve's example from before, right? Instead of believing that thing that stops you, can take that same experience, reframe it, and believe something that's more useful, more impactful, allows you to have resources instead of blocks in your life. So what we do with the Sleight of Mouth is we take either the X causes Y, that if then, we put that in the middle, and then we do all these Sleight of Mouth patterns around it, or we take the cause effect, the meaning, I'm sorry, the complex equivalence, as it's called in NLP, the criteria to the meaning, we put that in the center. So if you were to zoom in on that X, Y thing in the center, there's either an arrow in the middle or there's an equal sign in the middle. So it's either X arrow Y, like X causes Y, or it's X equals Y, X means Y. So that's the way that Robert Dilts created that little equation in the middle. So here's an example. The cause effect in the middle, and all these different examples of sleight of mouth patterns that are there. So those are named now icons. So we have not only just the icons, but also they have the names. There's consequence patterns, intent patterns, redefined patterns. You can see them all there. Oh, and by the way, if you don't know these, if you wanted to go to my website, I think it's ericksonian.com. It might be also available at essentialcoachingskills.com. I should know the answer to this question, but I think it's one or the other. Maybe it's both. You can put your name in a little thing and email address, and you'll download a thing about Sleight of Mouth. You can download a whole thing about Sleight of Mouth so that you've got all these patterns written down for you. So I wish I could tell you exactly. I'm not going to take the time to look it up. ericksonian.com. Pretty easy to remember if you know Ericksonian hypnosis at all. Ericksonian.com is one of my websites. I'm pretty sure that's correct. If you go there, you can sign up you're signing up for the newsletter if you put your name and address in there, because you get the full Sleight of Mouth patterns. I think it's probably also true at the other website, essentialcoachingskills.com. Anyway, downloadable for free if you want to do that. So let's go on to some other things. So what we do with Sleight of Mouth when we're teaching it here is we start with this center belief, but then we add, sorry. So that's okay. I haven't gotten there yet. So that's where we put the center belief, the belief in the center there. So here's an example. So NLP is famous for quick work. So sometimes, as an example, somebody might come into your office as an NLP practitioner, NLP coach, and they might be complaining about a phobia that they have, right? They might have a phobia of chickens. They might have a fear of chickens, an uncontrollable fear of chickens. And maybe their roommate just has a pet chicken, so it's a real problem. Or maybe it's a cat, or maybe they have a phobia of flying, or maybe they have a phobia of mice or bugs or something, a phobia. Well, NLP has a fairly famous thing called the phobia cure, right? Which can be done in one session. You can go through one session with an NLP practitioner and cure a phobia. So they're not afraid of cats, they're not afraid of chickens, they're not afraid of flying. It can be done. Has been done hundreds, thousands of times. It's very quick. Now, some people, if you see this example, might say, well, it's too fast, because therapy, as everyone knows, they're saying this now. Therapy, as everyone knows, takes a long time. You've had this phobia for years. You're not going to just cure it in a day. It's going to probably take years to cure this thing you've developed for years. Makes sense on one sort of logical way of thinking. So that's what they believe. They believe if it's too fast, then it won't last, right? It might last for a day, it might last for an hour, but it's not going to last. Lasting change takes time. If it's too fast, then it won't last. You see that structure there. And that means it's not worth doing. So that's the belief that they're saying. If it's too fast, then it won't last. So it's not worth doing. So what does Sleight of Mouth do? It takes part of that and the cause and effect, or the complex equivalence, and it puts it into this thing. So let's look at what they might say for the intent pattern. This is one of the 14 patterns. We're just going to do one so you see what I'm talking about, of the 14 patterns available to you. So you might say something like this. If you can zoom in there, I don't know if I can even read it, but it's saying something like, I know you're saying that because you sincerely want to make these changes permanent. We can take as much time as you need to be certain inside that the change is yours to keep now. So the intent pattern, as you can see right there, is working on the person's intention. Now it's shaped like an arrow, isn't it? All these icons are shaped in certain ways for a reason. Some of them are reasons I think that Robert Dilts has unto himself. I'm not sure exactly. I've hallucinated. I've made up my own reasons for why they're shaped this way, but I never actually asked Robert exactly why he shaped, some of the ones the way they are shaped. But I'm pretty sure that the arrow is pretty obvious. It's kind of like it's going back in time ever so slightly from the statement, right? So time moves from left to right, in America. In English speaking world, we read from left to right. Calendars go from left to right. Time seems to go from left to right. So because this arrow is going to the left, so we go back in time ever so slightly to say, I know your intention behind what you just said. So I know your intention. We're mind reading their intention, right? So I know your intention. I know you're saying that because you sincerely want to make these changes permanent. We can take as much time as you need to be certain inside that the change is yours to keep now. So that's one way you could do this. Let's see if there's another example. There's the consequence example, right? So having a belief like that will ensure your problems will last a long time because you refuse to allow for other possibilities. That's the consequence pattern, right? So what we do with Sleight of Mouth is we look at all these different patterns. And ultimately, when you have all of them together, you have the option to fly through them one after another after another. All right. So, yeah. And this is, by the way, Robert Dilts' book I mentioned before. And this is my book on the User's Guide to Sleight of Mouth. Let me tell you a little bit of why I wrote that User's Guide to Sleight of Mouth. Funny story. Well, not funny, haha, but it's a good, I don't know if it's a good story. It's a story. It's the truth. I wrote the book Sleight of Mouth because I studied from Robert Dilts. I learned all this from Robert Dilts back in the 80s. And like I said, came back to New York City. Immediately people were like, tell us about Sleight of Mouth. So I taught a Sleight of Mouth workshop right then and there, literally within a month of getting back from learning it. I was teaching it. So I just basically taught what I learned from Robert. Robert made up Sleight of Mouth. Robert Dilts made up Sleight of Mouth. Robert Dilts made those icon charts. I have the examples, even in this book, even in the User's Guidebook. I cite, the guy that made it up. So I have the classic examples of Sleight of Mouth by Robert Dilts and his partner at the time, Todd Epstein, the late, great Todd Epstein. So I just taught the way Robert did. And those icon charts were so important to me in my learning of it. Just because, like I said, the toolbox of knowing where your tools are. If you're a surgeon, right, and you're looking for your scalpel, it's like, oh, I left it around here someplace. And it's like the patient could bleed out in the meantime. You need to go like scalpel, boom, right? You need to know where your tools are. You need to be able to use Sleight of Mouth on the fly in the moment when you're presented with a situation where you want to be persuasive. And really, where don't you? Where don't you want to be persuasive? You want to be persuasive no matter what, in relationships and sales and therapy and coaching, whatever it is. It's really important to be able to persuade somebody to go from one, perhaps even destructive belief to a positive, constructive belief. Of them thinking my only way of getting satisfaction is through this drug that I use. It's like, is that really the only way? And you can persuade them to find other choices. That's got to be an amazing thing, right? You want to be persuasive in all situations. So with Sleight of Mouth, it gives you that opportunity to do that because you can always find a pattern. There are 14 different patterns. If one isn't working, there's other ones to choose from. And so I found that this mapping of all these different things was really important for me so that I could keep track of the tools that I needed to use. So I kind of memorized it. I didn't memorize it on purpose. I just had drawn the map a bunch of times with my hands on a piece of paper, just drawing it. So I knew what those shapes were. I kind of had an idea of what they meant. And then I found that when I was really in a pinch, when I was really trying to use Sleight of Mouth, when it was important to me to use it, it was almost like I could see this chart in front of me. I could see it right in front of me. I go, okay, there's the middle, there's the apply to self ones, there's the redefine ones, there's the content consequence, there's the intent. I could see them all right in front of me. It was really important to me to learn it that way. I taught it that way. Second class, I came back. So when Robert Dilts's book came out, the one that I showed you a minute ago, it's an excellent book, Sleight of Mouth. When that book came out, I said, oh boy, this is going to be great. I can show people, I can use this. I can show people what I mean. He didn't have those mind maps in there. Those icon representational charts are not present in his book. It's a great book, worth reading. Didn't have those charts in there. So the reason I wrote my book, literally, is so that I could say, this is the user's guide to Sleight of Mouth. This is how you use it in real life, which is why, for my mind, is like, that's why I want to do it in the first place, is so that I can use it for myself, for my clients, for my relationships, whatever. I want to be able to be persuasive in the moment. So it's a user's guide to Sleight of Mouth. That's why I wrote the book, literally why I wrote the book, because of those charts. So we work on it. We practice them every day. Every day that we're in class, we go through these things. I have you drawing the charts. I want it so that you, like me, have them in your fingertips, as it were, by the time we're done. So yeah, it's a 4-month cohort, which is to say we get to know each other. It's a cohort, not just a class where I'm telling you that it's an interactive class. We're having conversations all the time. You go into practice rooms, like Steve was saying before. We do breakout rooms. We stop the tape. Every class is recorded. You have access to all the recordings. So if you have to miss a class, you can look it up and follow it and catch up for the next week's class. People get to know each other. Steve was mentioning before we got on camera that he was in a practice group separate from my classes. But people said, this is a great idea to practice. Let's get together outside of class. So he's made lasting friendships from people in this like-minded community. Right? Men and women of all ages, literally. Well, not literally, and not all ages, but there's a broad scope of ages represented, from quite young teenagers to quite not young, 80s type thing. I don't think I had anybody in the 90s last year, but 80s. Broad spectrum. 70s, a smattering of people in the elder years, but a lot of people throughout. 20s, 30s is probably the mainstay, but 40s, 50s for sure. Look at me, Steve. But they're there, and you can fit in. You'll find people who are just like you there. So I'd like you to come. This is good. I'm not doing a big sales thing. I'm offering you this opportunity to be with it. I am probably not going to do it for much longer. I've done it for the past few years. It's great to be live with people. It's great to create these communities. It's great to create friendships, on these things. And probably not going to do it very much longer. Maybe this may be the last year, but you can join a full year cohort now for really pretty low price, especially if you consider that you don't have to do all the traveling and paying for hotel rooms and that sort of thing. So it's a great opportunity for you to learn how you can do this for your life and your practice, whether you're a coach or any other person, whatever profession you might be. Salespeople, it's fantastic for sales. On Monday, it was just yesterday, I had Michelle Pop on here. Michelle is helping me a lot with my marketing. If you read any of our sales letters, you're reading Michelle mostly. I influence them and whatever, but she's the main author for many of them. She's taken Sleight of Mouth from me as well, and other people. But she mentioned that we're working on a teaching aid. She mentioned, I'm not going to mention it today. You can listen to yesterday's recording if you really want to know what she was talking about. But we're working on different ways that we can get it into your fingertips. I'll give you a clue. When I was learning Sleight of Mouth for myself, I made a set of I took 3x5 cards just like this, and I wrote the patterns down on the 3x5 card. I only made 14 cards with one of the 14 different patterns on it per day. And what I would do is I would take one of these cards and I'd slip it into my shirt pocket every day when I went to work. And I'd get on the New York City subway and I'd ride on the subway and I'd be thinking, okay, what's today? Today is the applied to self. Okay. And then throughout the day, I would task myself with doing sleight of mouth out loud in conversation with a person, appropriately, of course, at least 3 times throughout the day. At least 3 times throughout the day. And then the next, I'd come home from work, I'd put the card back on the deck, right? And the next day, I'd take the next card off the top. I did that. And I also did this. I also drew my own patterns, took a blank piece of paper, drew blank ones like that. And sometimes I got to the point where I Xeroxed them because I started to get lazy. But I'd Xerox them and I would just fill them in. I think of what belief comes up in my life regularly that I should have a better way of talking about it. I was tired of saying, I should have said that, or I should have said that. I wanted to have a good retort at the ready. I was the king of I should have said that, 30 minutes after the fact. that was me, 30 minutes later, I should have said that. I wanted to have it ready. So I would put a belief that the person, maybe piano students, say, I didn't have time enough practice today because I had too much homework. Or if I had too much homework, then I couldn't practice. So I would put it in the center. And the next time a kid would say that to me after a piano lesson or during a piano lesson, I would know what to say to that little guy. Right? So you practice. And I would just fill this out like I was doing a crossword puzzle. Other people on the subway would be, writing crossword puzzles or reading a book or whatever. These days, of course, everybody's on their phone. But back in those days when I was a young man, I used to do this on the subway. That's the way it was, and we liked it. So, yeah. So the cart is actually open, I understand, from Michelle. So if you go to essentialcoachingskills.com, I don't have that information. This is informal. The real launch starts tomorrow. Questions about cost and stuff I have to be put off to tomorrow because I honestly don't know the answer. It's approximately $3,000 for the year, for a full year, which is really good. I mean, I charged about that much for 3 months of coaching, just so you know. So it's all live for a year. And so it's worth it, really, truly, honestly. It's a great thing. I hope to have you there. I hope to get to meet each other and get to know each other over the next several months of doing this. So this is it for today. This is a Facebook Live, a YouTube Live, informal kind of thing. Tomorrow we're going to do more of the webinar. So I'll have some more PowerPoints. I'll have practiced talking about them instead of today just kind of winging it. Thursday we'll do some more winging it with more focusing on NLP and the NLP essential skills that we teach over the NLP cohort and the Neo-Ericksonian hypnosis course on Friday. We'll be talking about that. So somebody's asking, Shabo, how do I find the membership? I wish I had the answer to that. I don't know. Eric's essentialcoachingskills.com is my main website. If you go to that place and you can't find it, then tell you what, you can always email me. My email address is doug@ericksonian.com. doug@ericksonian.com. The launch starts tomorrow. So tune in again tomorrow, tune in again Friday. You'll know how much it costs. You'll know how to get to it. It's just really freshly open. But if you want to email me, doug@ericksonian.com, ERICKSONIAN, I will get your emails. So I apologize for not having that at my tips of my fingers, but you'll believe me. Tune in tomorrow. You'll know full well what the cost is. Thanks so much for being here. See you guys real soon, hopefully tomorrow. Bye-bye. Hit end stream. I'll hit it again. I'll hit it a third time.